Sometimes, praying in tongues believers make very foolish mistakes. I witnessed a young lady who had the gift of praying in tongues make a very foolish mistake. It was a sad experience, but it had arguably the most important praying in tongues lesson. Sadly, I still see many praying in tongues believers making the same mistake. The mistake is common because it doesn't feel like a mistake. In fact, some praying in tongues believers become defensive when they are told what they are doing is a mistake. Today, I'll explain the mistake using an encounter I had with one of the sisters in the fellowship I was attending. If you have been making the same mistake, I hope this revelation will open your eyes and help you be wiser. The mistake is subtle, but its impact is tremendous. Avoiding this mistake is the difference between getting results when you pray in tongues and praying in tongues with no results. Unsurprisingly, the Bible has addressed it. I'll explain everything for you. At one point, I served as a prayer coordinator in the small fellowship that we had in school. The fellowship was for young people, mostly in their late teenage years and early 20s. Everyone in the fellowship was very prayerful, and the level of spirituality was very high. You would never suspect anything from any of the members in the fellowship. Little did we know, Judas was a disciple of Jesus. From time to time, I would get personal requests for prayer, given that I was in charge of prayers. On a particular day, a young lady in her early 20s came to me with a prayer request. She seemed to have had the request for a while before approaching me with it. Because I had a policy of listening to everyone, regardless of how absurd their prayer request might be, I gave the young lady my ear. "What would you like me to pray for?" I asked her. "Pray for me that I may know my husband," she said directly to my face. Her request was short, simple, and straightforward. I was tempted to start interrogating her, but I held back my words and said, "Okay, I'll pray for you." There were a few issues of concern that made me skeptical to pray for her. First, I wasn't sure if she was serious about her request. I knew marriage was a serious affair, and I wasn't convinced if a 21-year-old would be seriously considering to get in. Secondly, I wasn't sure if she had made any attempt to pray about the matter herself. She was a serious believer and was capable of praying for the matter herself. Thirdly, I suspected she was in a relationship with someone and was seeking for prayer to see if that person was the right one for her. This was commonly the case with prayer requests of that kind. Despite all the concerns, I decided to just pray and see what God would reveal. After all, I was just a vessel, and God had the final say over the affairs of His children. Right away, without any more deliberation, we held hands and began praying in tongues. Usually, I would hold hands with people and pray in tongues. In the process, God would reveal His mind concerning the issues the people had. This case was no different. After praying in tongues for about 3 minutes, there wasn't any revelation I got, but it was still too early to make any conclusion. Sometimes I would pray for people and would not get any revelation whatsoever. In such cases, I would actually know that God was intentionally silent about the matter. That used to happen if the person already knew the answer to their prayer but was still praying for an answer. In other cases, God would remain silent to test the resolve of the person with their request. In some interesting cases, God would reveal to me an answer and then command me not to share with the person for various reasons. In the case with the young lady, I continued praying and the Lord revealed something interesting. The revelation came after about 5 minutes of praying in tongues. The lady had also been praying in tongues as I was praying in tongues. The instruction the Lord had for the young lady was simple: read my word. We paused the prayers and I told the lady what the Lord had revealed to me. At first, she was excited that God had revealed something to her, but shortly afterwards, she voiced her disappointment in the answer that she received. She told me, "I've heard, I'll read the word, but I just want to know my husband." I told her we could pray some more to see if God would give any further instructions. She accepted and we resumed praying in tongues. Sure enough, God gave me further revelation about the matter. The Lord helped me understand that He intended to give the young lady a husband, but He knew she would face great spiritual battles. As a result, the Lord wanted her to equip herself with the word, which is the sword of the Spirit. Once she had good understanding, He would give her a husband. That way, she would comfortably handle the spiritual battles that would come with the marriage that she desired. I relayed the message to her. I told her, God wants you to read the word, and through it, He will prepare you for marriage. I concealed the details of the spiritual battles so that she wouldn't get scared. Later on, I was haunted by my decision. After relaying the second message to her, she said, "Okay, I get that, but can you just ask God to tell me who my husband is? I just want to know who he is, and I will do everything else he is telling me." Though I was starting to get frustrated, I didn't want to show it. I obliged and offered to pray again. We held hands for the third time and prayed in tongues. Just like the previous times, the Lord responded in a matter of minutes. This time round, he asked me a question. If she can't take simple instructions from the Lord, how will she be a helper to any man? That was the only response from God and nothing else. Knowing that the Lord had closed his case, I was left with the difficult task of articulating the answer to the young lady. What happened next left me very sorrowful. I told the young lady, "The Lord has already instructed you what you need to do. He is insisting that is what you need to do. Augustine, I've had the instruction and I will do it. All I'm asking is to know my husband," she replied. "Do you want to tell me God doesn't know who my husband is?" She followed up. "God knows who my husband is, and I want him to tell you so that you tell me," she concluded. Hearing her words left me tongue-tied. I felt trapped and helpless. "I can't tell you anything more than what the Lord has revealed to me, and you know what the Lord has said," I responded. From there onwards, she kept bombarding me with similar questions, and her frustration kept increasing. I couldn't pray for anything more because God had already given an answer and closed his case. The meeting ended with the young lady storming out of the prayer room, barely holding back her tears. I was left seated, wondering if I had handled the situation properly. Not having revealed the details of the spiritual battles the Lord wanted her to prepare for haunted me. Maybe she would have understood if I told her, I thought to myself. A few days after the drama, while still struggling with a bit of guilt, God consoled me with a revelation. The Lord helped me understand that he knew from the beginning the young lady would not accept his instructions. But because I requested him to speak concerning the situation, out of the love that he had for me, he gave that instruction. The Lord explained that it was important for me as a leader to have an answer so that people would not lose faith in me and subsequently lose faith in him. The Lord then explained that his command was a simple test to expose the impatience of the young lady. Had the young lady prayed for herself, God would not have answered her because of her impatience. This revelation was shocking to me, given that the young lady was very prayerful. I would never imagine that God would not answer her because she was impatient. On top of that, the Lord allowed me to know that the young lady was eyeing a certain young man and wanted God to confirm it. Not long after that, true to what God spoke, the story of the young lady and the young man she was eyeing came out. The events left me with mixed feelings. We spent a lot of time praying in tongues in the fellowship with the young lady. It was hard to believe the true nature of her heart. After that incident, she barely showed up in the fellowship. She seemed to harbor bitterness and was always closed off. No amount of talking to her would make her open up. This tragic encounter taught me a very important lesson about praying in tongues. For a person whose character is flawed, praying in tongues will not bear any fruit. If we don't have patience, no amount of praying in tongues will convince God to grant our heart's desires. The Bible confirms this truth in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13 verse 1, where it says, "Even if someone prays in the tongues of men and angels but does not have love, his tongues are nothing more than empty noise." Therefore, to have the most impact from praying in tongues, we should always maintain good character before God. God bless you.